Hello all, it's wonderful to be with you today. I would welcome warmly those who are joining us, especially from overseas, and it's also great that we've got both daytime and nighttime groups. I'm Deb Sugars and I'm a member of the CBSI leadership team, but I'm a bit more behind the scenes, so you don't normally see me. Well, last week Emma spoke about Revelation chapter 4 and you studied it together, and we saw an amazing picture of Jesus' majesty, of God's majesty. And today, as we look at Revelation chapter 5, we develop this further. This chapter actually launches the rest of the book of Revelation. We have another picture about God, about the true nature of his creation. The readers of the time would have immediately understood some references in this passage from the Old Testament that we find tricky. Some of these are things like when somebody wrote on both sides of the scroll, it meant they had a lot to say. In the Old Testament, in Ezekiel 2 and Zechariah 5, a scroll refers to a curse which goes out over the whole land. And seals in Old Testament prophecy refer to matters belonging to judgment and to the end times, or to things whose meaning will be revealed in the future. The scroll points to the problem of human sin. It appears no one in heaven or earth can open the scroll. But the great news is the Lamb can. So Jesus is both, he's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. We see that in Genesis 49 and other places in the Old Testament. And we see that Jesus is descended from David's kingly line. In verse 5, he's the root. So the lion is representing God, the rule of God's powerful, majestic kingdom. But then we see that this Jesus in verse 6 is also the slain lamb, the lamb that is covered with blood. What a complete contrast, what a paradox. The lion is ruling, but he does so through the suffering of Jesus. The elders and the four living creatures, and later all creatures, recognise him as the Lamb and worship him. We'll come back to this. So the second thing to notice is that God judges, but Jesus deals with our sin. This is the good news. Though Jesus died, and it seems like that's a defeat, it's actually a triumph over sin. Jesus is worthy because in verse 9 it says, "You were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation." Jesus is considered worthy to unveil God's righteous judgment. This good news about Jesus, which Kathleen explained so wonderfully last week, is not God's afterthought after sin ruined the creation. Instead, the good news was always part of God's plan. God created the heavens and the earth with the specific plan and purpose to bring all things under him to their ultimate goal, and that is to be saved and for the creation to be restored. And this happens through the suffering and death of Jesus. The effect of this event stretches both backwards, is now, and stretches forwards. So we can be totally sure that we are saved because Jesus has come. And you'll remember when you watched the Bible Project in week 1 that it said the good news is the key to understanding the rest of the book of Revelation and helps us to deal with some of the less comfortable and more confronting parts of the book. So, third thing is, how should we respond to this passage? We see clearly that the four living creatures and the elders and the angels and then all the creatures worship God by singing and saying what they understand to be true about God. But what does this look like for us? We worship like that. But as Emma said last week, worship actually means all of our life. Paul says in Romans 12, verses 1 and 2, that we are to, he says, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Since Jesus died and rose for us, we are called to live in this relationship, thankful to him and wanting to live his way each hour, each day, each week, each month. And God helps us to do this by transforming us moment by moment. How amazing is that? Renewing our minds by his word, which is revealed to us through the Holy Spirit. So God is doing this in us as we go about every one of our daily tasks, dealing with difficult bosses and co-workers and family members, cooking, taxiing, looking after children, even reading a novel, if only, for some of you. Our worship is our response to Jesus. God is at the very centre of our thinking. Yes, it does include the specific times when we meet with other believers and when we set aside time ourselves to read, to pray and to sing. But this is only part of our worship. So this week I have two challenges. Firstly, because we can be sure that we are saved, please keep on praying for opportunities and openings to share this great news with family and friends and neighbours, that this majestic Jesus, the slain Lamb who died and rose again, has wiped out our sin. And the second thing is, remember to worship in every part of your day, that every part of your day is your worship of God.